Hello, this is Hilary Robertson. Welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. I'm joined today by Tom Hammond and James Francis Brown, who are co-artistic directors of Hertfordshire Festival of Music. And this year's festival will run from 4th to the 10th of June. It was postponed last year, obviously, due to the pandemic, and this will be a very special event. Chloe Hanslip is this year's principal artist, and Judith Weir, CBE, is the featured living composer. There are lots of artists and ensembles performing this year at lots and lots of different venues. And I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with Tom and James very shortly. I hope you enjoy listening. Welcome to Harmonious World. I'm joined by Tom Hammond and James Francis Brown.
Hello. Hello, Hilary.
Hello.
Hi, nice to see you both. Thank you for joining me. Can one of you begin by telling me what the decision-making process was about obviously cancelling the 2020 festival and then deciding that you were going to risk it and go for it this year?
I think the decision to cancel was fairly obvious, and also hugely complicated to work out the best way to do it. We thought originally, well, shall we move it into, how naive this now sounds, but shall we move it into the sort of later in the summer last year? And of course things just got worse and worse, and we saw how it was going and thought, well, next year. And now, of course, there was even that point where we were thinking, did we even get that right? But I think with the whole way that things, the vaccine rolling out and so on, I think we felt, collectively as an organisation, that the time was right. We would be in the vanguard of those organisations starting up again. But it felt just about right, actually. And we're doing the very best we can to make sure that any remaining doubts about, the wisdom of going out and about to attending a live concert is diminished, because we've got lovely kind of ideas. We've got spacing, bubbles, and so on.
The other thing was that last year in the spring, when we took the decision we had to postpone, we were in a position to offer the musicians who'd been due to perform in June half of the fee that they would have taken that summer, which, I mean, at that point there'd been no announcement of things like, well, it wouldn't count for our musicians furlough scheme, but certainly the self-employed help hadn't been announced. So at that point, to even offer what in a way was sort of chicken feed, but just to offer the musicians something felt really important. And we're lucky that the Arts Council, who support us generally, were supportive of that decision. The one at the moment sad admission from this June's programme, however, there's one musician who's the fifth member of a group called ZRI, who were doing a fantastic semi-open air concert at Hertford Brewery on the 5th of June. But Iris lives in Cyprus. Now, last year, Cyprus was one of the least affected places in Europe and possibly on the planet, but actually at the moment, Cyprus is suffering. So Iris can't come. So we're trying to work around a bit of a clever technical solution to have her there virtually as part of the group. Can't promise anything because, you can imagine the potential barriers to live zooming from Cyprus, but the rest of the group was so devastated that they couldn't be the five that they always, that they are, that they're trying to involve her in some way, shape or form.
Thanks. James, when you started off that response, you were talking about the decision to cancel 2020's festival. And I think that decision to pay the musicians 50%, that's an amazingly generous, and I know that other venues and organisations have perhaps been criticised for not being so generous. And I think that goes to show how much this is a festival of musicians, by musicians, for musicians, to show your best to the audience.
That's very generously and nicely put, actually. And I think you've touched on there what Tom and I feel is the difference between a festival and, let's say, a series, a concert series. However important those things are, we've felt this in the last 5 years. It feels very much as though you're cultivating a sort of, how would I put it, a sort of family atmosphere, because musicians come for a few days. There's a sort of cross-pollination of ideas and moods and so on. And I think the audience picks this up as well. If they're a bit more immersed in something like a festival where they see musicians coming in and out of sort of coffee shops and so on, and there's stopping in the road for a quick chat, that kind of thing really does go on. And so there is a feeling of a kind of companionable element between musicians and audience that I think it's very hard to achieve in other circumstances. And that's one thing I think we want to encourage and expand that sense of a family of musicians and audience.
Great. Moving on to this year, tell me the dates, tell me some of the venues that you're using.
So we start on Friday the 4th of June, and it's on and off until the Thursday the 10th of June. A lot of the activity happens over the first weekend in Hertford itself, although later in the festival we're in Hitchin, Benzo Music, we're in near Potters Bar, Queenswood School, who've also been a huge support to us, where there's a masterclass happening there and some concerts. Venues wise, we've got a beautiful church in Hertford called All Saints, which is a very big space. Ordinarily can hold up to 500 people, but we're only allowed to have 70 members of the audience maximum. So
Wow.
it's not going to feel, I'm sure it will still feel brilliant though. Any other time it would feel awful, but to have 70 people in a space that big, but I think this year that will still feel like an absolute crowd, and it's acoustically it's fabulous, especially for instrumental music. There's also the Hertford St Andrew's Church, which is a little more intimate, but another beautiful space, fabulous acoustics. The first concert is the Albion String Quartet, and they're in that church. An unusual venue is the brewery at Mullins Brewery, which is very near the centre of Hertford, and it's going to be a sort of semi-open air gig. There will be beers and other drinks available. Not all of them need to be alcoholic, but there are alcoholic drinks available, and people will be able to sit, in their groups, in their bubble groups, and the music for that's been provided by the group ZRI. The one that I mentioned should be 5. 4 of them here. One of them is in Cyprus.
And they're a fantastic group, aren't they? I saw them at Benzo a couple of years ago.
Oh, yes.
They were, they're just so fun. They make classical music so engaging, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's toe tapping stuff, that's for sure. One venue that we usually love to be at in Hertford, but we can't this year because it's just too small, and the amounts of people who'd be allowed inside would just make it impossible, is the Friends Meeting House, which is the oldest Quaker meeting house still in use in the entire world. It's built in 1670. It's a superb space. If you ever get a chance to visit, it's got incredibly thick walls, and wood, and it's just timber and plaster, and it hasn't really changed much at all since 1670. And the acoustics in there are also fabulous, especially for sort of smaller groups. We often have had jazz musicians in there, but we can't this year. But we want to celebrate the fact that they had their 350th anniversary in 2020. So we've got an early music group called Fontanella. They're actually going to do the performance back in All Saints Church over the road, but the whole programme is about the music of that year.
At Queenswood, we have the masterclass, which Tom and I have very much enjoyed. We've had a tremendous response to the call for musicians, actually of any age. One of our outlooks with the festival, and again, this is a sort of festival thing, is that usually there's this sort of cut-off point at the age of 30, and everything's seen as a competitive thing. If you don't get there when you're young, then you sort of, that's it, closed door. But that we've always opened that out. And yes, a tremendous response. It was very difficult for us to bring it down to the number that Chloe Hanslip can cope with. But I think that's going to be fascinating, the chance to see how a wonderful musician like Chloe thinks, and also how she's able to convey with not just words, because of course she will demonstrate how to get these sounds out of the instrument, and it's a very exciting thing to see that transmission and inspiration cross from one person to another in just a few minutes. And sometimes you hear amazing transformations of sound and expression coming from musicians who haven't possibly had that kind of opportunity and encounter before. That's going to be very exciting. We also have the 2 performances on Thursday with Chloe and Danny Driver, who's they're a partnership that go back a long way, and Chloe has recently released recordings of all the Beethoven violin sonatas, and we would have been last year, of course, celebrating the big Beethoven date. But we think, well, Beethoven's always got something to say about such a wide range of human condition, and actually loneliness is one of those things that he very much encountered through his deafness himself. And I think you can feel this inner imagination, this intimacy, quietness, particularly in the last violin sonata that he wrote. It's just such a strangely beautiful, haunting piece. It's quite big, and it goes into strange areas, but it's so beautiful. I think it will be a very consoling moment for the audience to hear that piece.
I think that just to quickly say about the masterclass as well, we will be able to live stream that one for anyone who couldn't get there in person. We're not doing much in the way of live streaming actually as a festival, for all sorts of pragmatic reasons. Also, I have to admit, this is purely personal. I don't expect James to agree with this, but I just want to go back to purely live music consumption once more. But just picking up on that feeling of loneliness, or is it a bit of a consolation? I'm not sure. But in the concert in Hertford that Chloe is our soloist for, this is in All Saints Church on the Saturday, the 5th of June. There's two short performances of the same programme, but she's finishing with a fabulous piece of music by Arvo Pärt called Fracture, which is you can have that piece in sort of very many different formats. Sometimes you'll hear it just with the violin and piano. It kind of works on a number of instruments in a number of ways, but we're doing it with Chloe Hanslip as the soloist, with a string orchestra and a little bit of percussion. It's not a long piece, and it's, in some senses, it's not a complicated piece of music, but it's got an incredible power, and I would just call it hypnotic. And I don't know why it feels like a relevant piece of music for coming out of the last year, but it just does. Queenswood School is a new venue for the festival this year, and the school have been incredibly supportive to us, and they're hosting Chloe Hanslip's violin and viola, I should say, masterclass on Tuesday the 8th of June, as well as the last concerts of the festival on Thursday the 10th of June in their chapel, which is a lovely space, a lovely building. And it's just nice for us to explore a little bit of Hertfordshire we haven't been to before. We have a kind of home base, as it were, in Hertford, but every year that the festival has been going, we've gone somewhere else. Could be St Albans, we've been to Stevenage, we've been to Hitchin a number of times, with Benslow, of course, and now down towards the Hatfield Potter Bar area with going to Queenswood School.
So tell me about the Dementia Project that's part of the festival as a whole and not linked to a specific concert or a specific venue?
Yes. So this is something we've been planning for some time now, working in partnership with the outreach part of the Orchestra of the Swan. It's called Music Cares, and they have a very innovative approach to sending specially trained musicians into care home settings to bring music to people for whom that is one of the main points of access to a wider sense of being, when so many other routes to that are diminished, particularly as a result of what's happened in the last year. Visitors not being able to visit their loved ones in care homes. And I have a sort of unfortunately rather special insight into this, in that my father is living with Alzheimer's. He's in a care home, and I've seen the transforming power of music. I went in to see him before COVID. Obviously, I've hardly seen him in the flesh, as it were, over the last year. But I was able to go in and play. They had a piano in the care home, and I was able to go in and play pieces that I'd played as a child, which he'd been sort of sitting there listening to me practice. And I should say, he'd become very quiet and reclusive, not tending to sort of make conversation. But when I finished playing this piece, I looked round and saw that he had tears rolling down his cheeks, and he was never a particularly sort of emotionally, exuberantly emotional person. And he said something that absolutely sort of brought a lump to my throat. He said, "All my friends have come back," which struck me as a very poetic way of putting what music is to a lot of people. It's like the sense of a friend or a being that returns from time to time, because it's sort of as complicated as a being. I think music, it's as rich as, and this is something that has become more and more acknowledged within the care home setting, the power of music to transform lives. So this is what we want to do. We're having to use all sorts of technology to get it to work, because we aren't actually going to be physically going in there. But that challenge we've overcome thanks to Zoom, and it's going to work well, I think.
That's fantastic. So the musicians who are performing as part of the festival are getting involved in performing, albeit through a screen, but nevertheless for people in a care home setting. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, and it's sort of bi-directional, so it's it's interactive.
Oh, good.
So at any level that people will be able to participate, that's fine. It's just making that connection. And
there's another way that we wanted to sort of widen opportunity as well, which we are able to do, albeit limited a little bit this year, of course, which is we're going to do what's called a relaxed rehearsal midday on Saturday the 4th of June at All Saints Church in Hertford. So this is actually part of my rehearsal time for the concert that I'm conducting that night. So it's a double challenge, because we want to really include the people who can come inside the church at that point. And the idea is it's for anyone who ordinarily felt they couldn't come to the performances in the evening because of the need to remain kind of quiet, during concerts. You can't, I don't necessarily subscribe to sort of cathedral-like, or should I say monastery-like quietness in performances, but, on the whole, you probably don't feel like you can sing along or clap along. So if you're the parent of very young children, or indeed anyone who feels like, they want to make noise, we've got this 45-minute open rehearsal with our orchestra that we've put together for this year. We're going to use the brilliant Romanian folk dances by Bartok, which is going to open the programme that night. Hillary's smiling when I'm saying
it. Yes.
I know. If you're listening to this and you go, never heard that music, You have to. It's amazing. And they're such good fun. And I'll let you into a little secret. I've already spotted the opportunity because one of these dances translates to dance on one spot. And since we're not supposed to move around at the moment and get too close to anyone else, kind of thinking we might be able to get a few people dancing in one spot.
Oh, that's brilliant. So where can people find out about the events of the festival?
The main portal, I think, to this is our website, the Hertfordshire Festival of Music, and we have a performance and events page with everything laid out in order, and we hope simple booking instructions. It explains also that, due to the precarious situation, people oughtn't to feel concerned that if there's a cancellation, there'll be a big problem. I think the refunding on tickets is something not to worry about.
We are present on social media, so you should be able to find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. The thing we can't do this year is sell you a ticket on the door, actually physically in person. But you could literally, if there are any left, because there are limited amounts of seats available, so we do encourage people to book early, but you could be outside a venue on your phone booking this ticket online, but we can't physically sell you that seat because we don't want to be dealing with touching tickets and all that kind of stuff at the moment. Hopefully next year it'll all be back to total normal.
Yeah, that's a really reassuring way for people to know that everything is being taken care of so that the venues and the musicians and the audiences are COVID safe.
Exactly. And also, as James was saying, if you had bought a ticket to come to an event and then you were told that you needed to self-isolate, we will refund you that ticket in full. So, there's no risk to booking a ticket in advance.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for joining me once more on Harmonious World. Please do leave me a review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also buy me a coffee. To finish, I'm just going to play another few bars from The Heart's Grace. You heard the opening at the beginning of this podcast, and now I'm playing a few bars from the middle. This is by James Francis Brown, and as performed by Tasmin Little on her award-winning CD. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.